You know, if anybody's ever experienced like brainstorming and but not really knowing that you're doing it at the time, and you're just kind of having a little conversation with yourself while you're doing the dishes, which is what I was just doing. And I had a, I remember like when I was finished with the dishes, like, man, all that was great. All that stuff was so great. Let me go fucking record a message to kind of expound on those ideas. And then I came over to hit record, and I'm like, what was I gonna say? But anyway, this one is about God, because I do really think that my this was kind of something that came up when I called my brother and we started talking about it. And I am up to this point not religious, basically atheist or agnostic or whatever. I didn't really even care to categorize it anymore. I just kind of thought that life was life, and you experience it and then you die, and that's try and have a good time. That's what kind of kept me going, is try to have a good time, but realistically acknowledge that it is life, and it's the only thing you're going to get to do. And but it's not like super consequential. So anyway, I don't know. I just kind of anyway, that was all I thought for a long time, and then recently I've come to believe that there is a God who exists and who is observing you, and loves you and wants you to have just such a great time, but that what time you have is up to you. That's kind of my viewpoint, and I think the question I'm going to get, and I'm sure some people are going to think, well, you were raised Christian, so is it the Christian God that you think is the God of the universe or whatever? I don't really think so. Um, what I think I experienced is just God showing Himself to me, and making it known that it's Him, and that it's everything that He's done is set up. I really do believe it's essentially just a game that we're all here to play, and some of the outcomes are so fun and thrilling and enjoyable that you win, and some people have to lose the game, but that ultimately we can all relate to the fucking fun experience that this place really can be if you let it be for a little bit. But that the fact that it isn't always so awesome is kind of the cool part. Is that it just wouldn't be very interesting if there weren't real stakes to this stuff. So I think that's a beautiful envision, idea that God had, and that is what it's the most entertaining reality television ever, is to see everything really going on and it be real. And God lets you experience that through this world that He's crafted for us. But I think that once we're done, we're going to kind of go back into like knowing everything all the time, all at once, whatever. Like the idea of heaven that I think the Christians try and paint, I kind of think it's pretty accurate. And I guess what I want to say is that God isn't, not just revealed Himself to the first person of all time. I'm not the first person of all time to really come and know God, and the fact that I don't know what He's called, means that He's an imposter. I actually think that He's the same guy behind like all of these feelings that we have that really connect us to, something, a single point of connection, which is our own Creator. We can all, every single human on Earth, connect to Him. When you believe in that concept, no matter what your exact soul is comprised of, the fact is that you are from Him. Just the same as it's true that you are your mother's son. That's just immutable. It's unchangeable. You are that. And so that's what I think God really is. But I think that, again, this is a world that's set up and it's a game to be played. And some people started playing the game, and they kind of got in between God and became some sort of middleman. I think that's what a lot of religions are. And I'm not necessarily knocking religion. I honestly think that it's really generally a good thing. Not all religions, I suppose, but I think that some of the most common ones that you'll find are probably pretty. They feel like they're what God mostly wants you to get out of this. But I do think that there are some, maybe a little bit of limitations that man has started to set up that necessarily aren't what he originally intended for everybody. And that, the idea that you got to pay tithe the church so the church can eat is kind of just a trick that the church is playing on you to kind of make you pay for an experience that's free. Anyway, but I don't really want to get in. I really think it's all fine. I guess is what it is, and I think that's what God thinks too, is that even the humans that are trickier, and nastier, and they run the churches, and I do think that there's some evil places and holy, evil in holy places, basically, that they really could just be holy, but there's corruption in them. I think that, but that God doesn't really care too much about that because it's still an acceptable outcome to him. He was curious to see what you'd do, and he really does love you, even the really bad people, even the mediocre people, and of course the people that most people love. I think that there are some people that we think are objectively just doing better, and they're more lovable inherently. But even the ugly ducklings, I think that God really did love them, just because that was pretty interesting. People aren't going to forget somebody so interesting who's you probably call him horrible, but I think that in his own way he was able to love them, just because they chose something that's so unthinkable even. But I think there's something to that, and that's a really weird perspective that is not conventional. And I don't know if like the religions kind of say that that's what God does, right? They'll be like, God loves you unconditionally, under the condition that you pay us and love Him. So that's not really how it goes, but the point is that there's some manipulation, I think, in what God. I think He really does love you unconditionally, even Hitler, right? Right? That's the can God love Hitler? I think that He can, and that's a weird idea. That I feel like certain aspects of some of these other more common religions would kind of reject that idea and think that there are certain things that are irredeemable. And I don't know. I'm not really here to comment on that, and really, I don't want to debate this shit really that much. I don't know that I would. I partake in that content a lot, of like religious debate. I used to be of content, something fascinating to watch. And I generally would say that I feel like the atheists had the better arguments. You know what I mean? But that's just the thing about faith. It really feels like you can be delusional and it doesn't matter. Like you can just be delusional and everybody else is wrong anyway. Like understanding that empirically they might have the better argument, but that in your heart you just feel so comforted by the truth that you don't care. And I used to think that they're just fucking lying to themselves, but I fully believe it now. So that's just, I think somebody probably resonates with that in some way, and they think that maybe there's a little bit to what I'm saying. But I just think that God makes multiple ways that you can get to Him, and that ultimately, even if you sometimes, the trickier humans made you pay an admission price, you still got to, you still got Him, and He's got you no matter what. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Is that not everybody comes to some sort of religion, and it's not necessarily something that everybody goes through, and that He thinks that's okay because He was just curious to see what would happen, and He hoped you had a good time, because that's kind of what you are. That's your vibration. Woo woo. Anyway, that's kind of my initial just. I had other things that I wanted to talk about before I sat down when I was doing the dishes. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, I should talk about that. I definitely need to talk about God more. So this is this one. But anyway, so if I remember what the rest I was thinking, I'll put it up there, I'm sure. See you guys.